just to introduce myself, I'm Simon. I'm the director of eCoach. I'm with the team behind the Whistle Academy, and we work with the FAW, the IFA, the SFA, Gibraltar, well, it's Grenada as well. I'm trying to get out to Grenada for a fact-finding mission, but I haven't been able to get out there yet at the moment. So obviously the Whistle Academy, yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can do a half-hour session. It's worth the flight and a week over there for that. But we're delighted to be joined by Cheryl Foster tonight for our Q&A session. And Cheryl, you joined us about a year ago, and it was a bit more of a sort of biographical look at your career to date at that point. And that was really interesting, and I'm sure we'll touch on aspects of that in a minute. But it's been quite a year for you, isn't it, in the last 12 months since we last chatted, and you've had quite a few kind of highlights, I would suggest. Is that right to say?
Yeah, I think we were just saying then, you know, how fast that year's gone and what's been packed into it. I think even then, I was saying how I'd like to be part of these big tournaments that were coming up, and you know, the summer was extremely busy, and I got to achieve, you know, something that I was aiming for or had aimed for when I first started refereeing. So to be the first female Welsh official to represent Wales and be in a major tournament was incredible. You know, I'm obviously very proud of that.
Yeah, and I've got a question. There's lots of questions that have come in, and obviously people can ask questions in the chat mode tonight, and Reese is around to jump in and throw any questions at you, as long as it's not about number 10 and politics at the moment. That's the only thing off the table, I think. To be fair, nothing like that. But one of the questions that came in, which we'll come to in a minute, but there's an element of the question that really stood out to me, and it's about barriers to female sort of progression as a referee. But it says, as you became Wales's most recognisable referee of all genders. I thought to myself, well, that's quite an incredible thing that you've achieved, really, isn't it, within a major footballing nation? And I think something that we hope will happen more and more often. But I can't think of any other sort of major footballing nation where the lead female referee is the most recognisable referee in the country. So I think that's probably testament to what you've achieved so far. I'm just trying to think. Can you think of that happening anywhere else?
Well, no, I'm a little bit taken back by that comment anyway, because obviously previous to me there was a lot of very good Welsh referees. Most, you know, notably my referees manager at the minute, Lee Evans. He was, you know, a Category 1 referee, and you know, done big games in his career. But to have that sort of said, or my name in the same breath, obviously, it's quite shocking, but obviously nice to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. But it did jump out, and I thought, gosh, that's probably right. And that's after the summer you had. Come to that in a minute. But potentially a good place to start then is to talk about, well, there's some stats. I got some facts, right? And I got on the Word document. They do make for some interesting reading. So, okay, all-time record appearance holder for the Welsh national team back in 2009. You reached that. You captained Wales. You're Bangor City's top scorer in every season, Northern Division, 99 to 2003. In 2010, then you were Liverpool ladies' longest-serving player. You scored Liverpool's first goal in the Women's Super League. And it goes on and on, really, doesn't it, as well? And you're the first female referee to take charge of a Welsh Premier League game. So throughout your career, you've hit milestones, and you've consistently done that. And I think a lot of people are probably asking, well, why on earth did you become a referee? Why didn't you become a manager or coach or go down the sort of traditional route? At what point in your footballing career did you kind of think, okay, refereeing might be an interesting end game for me?
I don't think I had that thought while I was playing, if I'm honest. I was playing for Wales, and we were in Switzerland, and one of the FAW councillors at the time, Cliff Evans, spoke to all of us and just asked the question, oh, is anyone considering refereeing or to be a referee? And we all laughed. I suppose coming to the end of my footballing career, you know, I had a few options. I think if you ask anyone, any of my former teammates, managers, they probably would never have put me in the category for a referee, if I'm honest. Maybe as a coach or a manager, because I love that side of it, and I still do. I love that analytical side and the game of chess that you can have in a game of football pre and during the game. And I think that's something I still enjoy even as a referee. When I'm on the pitch, I could see the slight tweaks and changes, and it's something that fascinates me. So I'd never close the door on that anyway. When my refereeing career finishes, I'd still like to do something like that, I think. But that conversation with Cliff, and probably coming to the end of my career, there was something there. And basically, when I had the choices of, do I sign for another club when I finish with Doncaster Bells, and basically I contacted the Welsh FA for two things, and one was the coaching badge, to be a coach or a manager, to revamp that. I did that in my early 20s. But I also contacted the Welsh FA about the refereeing course, if there was one coming up, and they came back quicker. They came back first, and maybe two weeks later, I was on a course in a social club in Brumbo, and then 2 months later, I was on the line at Saltney with a flag in my hand, thinking, "What am I doing here?" In fact, the funny story I've always got for that is they give you mentors when you first do the course. So my first game was in Saltney, like I said, and the mentors walked up behind me, and I was junior at the time, obviously, because that was my first ever game. And they said to me, they whispered very nicely, because it was a men's game, they said, "Cheryl, put the flag in the right hand." So I had the flag in the wrong hand, and then they went, "Cheryl, take a step closer to the line." Clearly, I was so petrified that I'd retreated as far away as I could from the touch line. So yeah, that sort of, I always joke that basically retired me from playing.
Yeah, and your debut for refereeing in comparison for your debut at sort of senior level football, which one were you more nervous for?
Oh, refereeing. To be honest with you, I didn't even think about it as a player. I was this young, probably very arrogant, well, in terms of playing for Wales, I think I was like 17 or something like that. And then for senior team in women's football, I was 15 or 16. It was, you just don't think about things like that. You just want to play football. So yeah, no nerves as a player. It was all referee.
Yeah. And another question that came in pre the session was that one that we kind of ask people quite often, but do you think that you are able to use your time in the elite game as a player to your advantage as a match referee? I mean, it makes sense that you would maybe know a little bit more about communicating with players, or you may know some of the tricks players use.
Yeah, to both. People used to say I was well renowned to get a penalty for a touch in the penalty area. But definitely as a former player, I think obviously that's a big help. But what I'll also add to that is that I'm a PE teacher in a school in Chester, and the management of that being, I've got sort of 34 girls in a group doing PE, and that management of the swarm of people around you and having to think ahead and all those things has really helped me as a referee as well. But like you said, one of my biggest gripes as a player was referees that spoke to you in a certain way, and I promised myself I'd never be one of those referees. Even if I can't answer straight away, I make sure that I'm polite enough, if I, just to say, give me a second. And I'm always, basically, I'm honest. If I've seen it, that's what I've given it for. But I try and explain my decisions because of the way that I know that I was treated in the past, and that's no disrespect to all the previous referees. And I'm not saying that my way is the right way, because I think referees, we're all individual, aren't we? We've all got our own personalities. It's a bit like teachers. Not every student like the way I teach, and then some people love me. It's exactly the same way. You look at the personalities in refereeing, and you think, "Oh, I love the way that Michael Oliver does this," but I don't like the way that Cheryl Foster does. It's just the way personalities work.
Human beings at the end of the day, aren't
and you're talking about 22 players, all with different personalities, and then four officials trying to do the best they can in that job as well. So yeah, very difficult. But I think playing and obviously being a teacher does help me.
Yeah, and talked about being a teacher and obviously being involved with young people. There's been a lot in the news recently, hasn't there, around young referees facing abuse across the UK. And is this something that you have seen an increase in recently, or do you think it's just the media picking up on something that's always been there?
I think it's always been there, and I think it's been highlighted more because the reason there's a shortage in referees is because any young aspiring referee or former player, whatever it is, whatever the story is, they just get put off by it. So of course they're trying to make it more well known, so people are more aware of themselves, what they say and their comments on the side of a football pitch. really does have an impact. And again, it go back to that personality comment, that what if that's a, quite a shy, introverted young lad or girl, and you're throwing out that, I won't say abuse, but comments that can affect them. I know plenty of former referees that have given up doing that because they don't love it or they don't enjoy it. And at the end of the day, that's why we do these things. That's why I was a footballer, because I love the game. That's why I'm a referee, because I still love the game. But it is a shame that it's still out there. Obviously, the governing bodies, the main powers have got to come up with these strategies that tries to, it'll never go, but do something. I had a good chat with someone else the other day saying why. It was actually with Hugh, who's the Carnarvon manager. We're just talking about how when he played rugby, you just wouldn't say anything to the referee. So why is that not the same in football? And I think they've got to come up with something, because otherwise you'll have more and more referees that don't want to do it anymore, and young referees or new referees that think, well, that's not worth a Saturday afternoon that I'm giving up for to have that level of comments and abuse at.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? You don't go into the spa and shout abuse at the 16-year-old behind the till because they haven't got your, pack of ice lollies or whatever else. It just seems like it's an area where almost abuse is tolerated, because it hides behind that kind of idea of people getting passionate about sport.
Yeah, I get, listen, like I said, former managers and teammates would never have thought I was going to be a referee because of my reaction to things, and I did react to decisions. And I always say it now, in any interview or anything like this, I always say, if I went back to being that 6-year-old, 17-year-old player, or even older, put me on a referee's course. Put me on a referee's course, and also make me referee an under 12s or an under 16s game, so you can see how difficult this is. And I think that, yes, I don't think it would stop it or stop my reaction to things, because it's a passion. It's a, you just want to win, you get frustrated, but I think that you might stop it, stop your thoughts a little bit more, because I've gone, I made that mistake when I was a referee. I do think there's something in that, if rather than fining a player for doing something, fine them, make them miss games, but also get them refereeing. Go on, you stand in that middle of the park and just see how difficult it is. That for me would be a really good solution to stop. Managers the same, managers and coaches, go and stand in there and just try to see it from our point of view.
That's one of my bugbears. And I think actually that is a proactive approach to it. Instead of punishing people and being punitive by fining them, banning them for 4 or 5 games, that's almost a positive way to deal with the issue, isn't it? And I was always amazed working with the FAW and speaking to the guys there, that you'd have players that would go through academies all the way up to professional football, male and female. You'd have coaches and managers who've been doing it for years and never had any training around the laws of the game. They picked it up from their own playing days. They picked it up from the media, watching Match of the Day or anything along those sort of lines. So they didn't even understand truly the rules that they were complaining about. They didn't understand that actually there'd been a change in the rules, or this had happened 2-3 years ago, and therefore things had changed. And I always thought that actually if you were to train up players when they're quite young, not only would it benefit them because they would understand the game a little bit more, and it's all about tiny percentages at the top end of the game, but obviously then it creates that empathy, creates that understanding. I would imagine if you just do this 2-3 hour course on refereeing, understand the basic laws of the game, and if you take part in maybe refereeing a small-sided game, it would have a big impact.
Massive impact. One of the things that I thought that the UEFA did really well before the Euros is they sent officials, including myself, I went to Northern Ireland and did a presentation to the players and the management on expectations of that tournament. Of course, that's not laws of the game, but it was a level of expectation that when you then watched, I watched the games in the Euros, never mind refereeing them, and you could see there was a consistency. We were told as officials, this is the way that, you had to deal with things, or, we weren't allowing for dissent, things like that. And then you look at the tournament, tell me how many players got caution for dissent? I don't think, not in my games anyway. They were very
Yeah.
respectful, and there's an element of, like I said, it wasn't laws of the game test or anything like that, or explain it, but he was able to sort of cut some things out. But I have said this for a while. I just think that it's a way forward, that rather than it just being a fine, rather than the player missing a couple of games or the manager missing a couple of games, is they sit a laws of the game test, or they sit a simulation where they look at all the clips that we look at and go on then, tell me what you give.
Yeah, I think parents too. I mean, my son went through the academies, and I remember this one, the greatest moment of my entire life. This is about 5-6 years ago. And his academy were playing Swansea City, and one of the Swansea City parents complained about a decision, and I said, no, the referee got that right. And I tried to explain why, and this guy turned around and said, oh, what? Are you a qualified ref? And I turned to him and said, no, I actually wrote the course on refereeing, which is kind of an element of what I did with the FAW. And I think that was a great moment to be able to say that. But again, there's so many people, and they get so sort of irate about decisions that are correct. And that happens in the media too. And again, commentators should probably need to go on these courses too, just to understand.
Totally agree. I was literally going to say that. I think there's, because a lot of commentators are former players, and especially players in a certain era where, a certain tackle in their era was great, and it was, competitive, and how brilliant was that? But now, if you look at it, you just can't do some of those things. So I think commentators are the same. I know that, for example, Gwenan is, a big advocate for me as a referee. We played football for Wales together, and she does ask me questions, and she wants to know a little bit more about that side. So I think it should be, to understand these concepts of refereeing and understand the laws, and now VAR, then somehow, there's an element of they should be experiencing it somehow.
Yeah, no, you touched on a subject I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, which will be VAR. And you've obviously been involved with VAR, not least at the Euros. So we'll talk about that in a moment. There's a couple of questions that have come in that link to what we were just talking about there. The kind of general questions before we get to the last 12 months that you've had. So this is from Ross, who says, have you ever had any difficult moments that you've considered quitting refereeing? And there's another question that came in, which is similar, that said, what kept you in refereeing when, especially in the early days, when you did, find those barriers or find those difficult moments? What was it that kept you in refereeing?
I'm quite a stubborn person. I think there was, one thing that I do miss about playing is playing for Wales, sort of that elite status, if I'm honest with you. Maybe that's an air of arrogance, I don't know. And I don't mean, if you ask anyone, I'm not arrogant at all, but I did love playing for my country. I love traveling. And when it was a quick journey refereeing, within, I'm trying to think, 3 years, I was a FIFA referee, and off I went to a mini tournament in Italy for 10 days, and I loved it. So there was an air of stubbornness, and I wanted, someone said, oh, you got a chance here. One of the first observers that in Italy, she said, I'm interested to see where you go, because I think you've got, a good chance here. And obviously, I never achieved a major tournament as a player, so why not as a referee? So there was that kept me in it. There's no doubt I'm not sitting here as an angel and saying that I never thought about quitting refereeing, because I have, for many reasons. So I guess, this time last year, were there elements that I thought had doubt? Of course there was. But the chance to referee in a major tournament like the Euros and then the Under-19 World Cup, that those sort of things keep you going. Those sort of things keep you going to a football pitch and doing a horrendous high intensity training session. There's highs and lows in everything. There's highs and lows when I was a player. There was a season where I was only an oncoming substitute, for example, for a year for Liverpool. Why didn't I quit that then? There's plenty of highs and lows in sport, and that's what makes you the difference between good, average, and someone that wants to be elite. Yeah,
I suppose you'd argue resilience is the key in any field in life, really, to get to the top, isn't it? It's just to keep going and taking the knockbacks.
I think COVID was a big thing. I was, there's loads of people that, there's elements of, we're not talking here just about abuse or difficult situations on a football pitch. We're talking about life events, and life events have also come into play for me as well. So yeah, difficult, but like I say, resilience and a little bit of stubbornness. So.
Well, and looking at the positives, I've got a question here from Werner, who says, on the positive side, what is the most exciting thing about being an elite ref?
Oh God. I'd have to say the major tournaments. Now I've experienced one, you sort of just get a bug for it. You know, the build up to it and the first game and just being in it. You know, I'm so proud to have been not just being part of the Euros. It was a real tidal wave of atmosphere and positivity and emotion. And I just really enjoyed being part of that. And of course, to be there, you have to be elite. So yeah, that's something that I think that's the main thing, just get into these major tournaments, you know, from where I'd come from and not knowing if I even wanted to be a referee. I think obviously it was a positive.
Definitely. And do you get really well looked after at these tournaments as well? I can imagine the food's late. Is the food laid out nicely for you? You've got nice hotel rooms, all of that, I'd imagine too.
Yeah, you can't complain, you know, if you travel, UEFA look after you. Same as FIFA going over to Costa Rica. That was, you know, sitting in a business seat on the way to Costa Rica was much better than economy, of course. You're able to sleep for a start. So yeah, you do get looked after. And this is, like you say, the perks of getting that badge and getting to a high level is that you are looked after, you know, nice hotels, the referee liaison officer, wherever you go, looks after you. They do everything to make sure that when you are then going on that football pitch, you are performing at 100%. And that's what it's all about. That's why they do all these things and look after you, is because they know how important your performance is on that game. Yeah,
definitely. I suppose it's useful for young players to kind of look at this and think, you know, I wouldn't mind being there in 10, 15 years time. You know, we all want to become referees because we love the game and we want to do right by the game and we want to have a positive outcome on the game. But actually having those moments, you know, where you are at major tournaments, you're in the Champions League as well, and spotlights on you, and you're getting all this positive media attention as well. And that's a major part of why people get into refereeing, I guess, as well.
Yeah, you get a total buzz from it. And you just want more. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So you've mentioned there the Euros and the fact that you've never got there as a player to a major tournament with Wales. Did getting there as a referee make up for that? Was it on a similar sort of level to what you would have expected that to have been?
Yeah, 100%, because there's an element of it being more so because me getting to the Euros was actually individual, you know, in terms, obviously there's a team behind me that helps me get there. What I mean by that is that, you know, I was a centre forward for Wales in a squad of 22, 24 players. You know, as a team, you're trying to get to a major tournament. But as a referee, you know, you're talking about performances are totally scrutinised for a year, 2 years leading up to a major tournament. You know, every mark that you get per game, or the attitude you show, or the fitness levels, the fitness tests, all those things, you as an individual have got to perform at the best for them to even consider you. You know, if you look at that elite list of female referees, there were so many that didn't go. So to be in the top 12, to be selected to go from Europe, you know, that's down to individual games and performances, like I said, and attitude and all those things. So I think it does go above. Of course, I would have loved to have done it as a player and playing for my country. And obviously, I was really, you know, sad and disappointed for the girls recently, you know, so close. You know, last second, you know, I was watching it, it was just last seconds of a game. And because you never know with penalties, shootouts, you know, anything can happen there. So I was so sad for them. But yeah, getting there as a referee, I think it does top it. Of course it does, because it's been hard work to get there too.
And do you think you've got the personality that deals well with that constant scrutiny that comes with being an elite referee, that constantly having kind of scores for all your games and the feedback, etc., good or bad?
Yeah, I think that, you know, going back to my playing days, you know, you were scrutinized there. You know, if I didn't score, if I didn't, you know, make the runs or anything like that, of course you do. And also as a teacher, you know, the students will know if you're a bad teacher, if you're having a bad day. You know, they are the biggest critics ever. And of course, we get observed as teachers as well. So, you know, senior leadership team comes down, watches your lessons. So that's good practice. But the scrutiny has got bigger because the game's got bigger. The viewing figures on games have got massive. The attendances at games has got, you know, so big. So the scrutiny has got bigger. But I think that, again, going back to my personality, I think there's a part of me that loves it, you know, that sort of buzzes off it. Not in an arrogant way, but just, you know, I remember standing, it was the Juventus game. So it was the quarter-final of the Champions League. And the music was going and the lights were flashing. And I was stood as the referee with the two teams behind me. And I was just like, right, come on, let's go. Let's get on this, because I just wanted to get on the pitch, because it just gave you that adrenaline rush. And that's what sport gives you, is those moments of pure adrenaline and enjoyment.
Well, it's something I can only dream of, especially as I'm a Cardiff City fan, which means we're going to be away from there on a personal level and a team level. But of course, you're a Liverpool fan, aren't you? So you've got that side of it too, which is obviously a positive. So the women's game has obviously exploded the last 12 months, you know, going back further than that, but it's become so incredibly popular. You face more scrutiny then from the media, etc., when you're doing games. I mean, how have you found the change between maybe a few years ago to now when it comes to refereeing at that level?
Yeah, I think, you know, like I said before, you know, there's more viewing figures for every game, especially as sponsorships have got bigger. You know, everything's become a bigger scale. The Euros were on the major TV channels. You know, it's so nice when I came home finally that so many people, even in work, the cleaner would go, "Oh, I saw you on BBC," so, you know. And then part of that, I suppose, because I'm a former player, there was some commentators that I'd actually played against, you know, Farrah Williams, Rachel Brown-Finnis, all those people that, you know, had a memory and remembering me as a player as well, and the fact that I'd got there. So maybe I was talked about from the commentary team a little bit more than maybe any other referee. I don't know. And from that, you know, I've got the opportunity this year of refereeing in the Women's Super League. So the FA and the FAW have come together and allowed me to sort of have I suppose, a dual registration. It's not that, but, you know, I'm able to do the Welsh Premier League for the men and then the Women's Super League. And of course, with the Super League getting bigger as well, you know, the level of interest in the games, you know, games are on Sky Sports. What happens in those games is on Sky Sports, BBC News, all those things. Twitter explodes.
Twitter. So, I was going to say, what's it like being all over Twitter? Is that a weird sort of thing?
Yeah, it's
seeing your name everywhere.
Yeah, it is weird, but I tend to, before and after game time, I'm not on there. You know, you don't look. You know, you get the odd messages come through and things like that, which I did experience in the Euros. People didn't like. You know, I think, you know, a couple of supporters sent a couple of messages, but I tend to steer clear from it anyway, and I know that all referees do anyway. You know, why do we need to read it? We are our own biggest critic.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's absolutely no point us going on Twitter to see what people's comments are, because if I've made a mistake, I know I've made a mistake. You don't need to tell me I've made a mistake, but all I've done is make a decision at that point in the game, at that angle that I got myself in. And then, you know, even if you know, do as best you can, a player runs across your vision, you've not, you know, there's all these things. I don't need to read any of those things. I know that myself if I've made a mistake.
And you're talking about the WPL and the Welsh Prem as well, refereeing in both. What any sort of marked differences between refereeing a male game or a female game, or is it basically? Is generally the same thing, the same sort of questions and issues that you have to deal with?
Yeah, it's basically the same, you know, especially because the quality is getting so good now in the women's game. You know, it's faster, it's getting stronger, it's getting more competitive. It's generally the same. You know, there are differences. I'd probably say just because of the physique a little bit, the ball can travel from A to B really quickly in the men's game. But listen, the first 20 minutes of the semi-final in the Euros, I was like, oh my God, if this carries on, I'm going to collapse, because my heart rate, when you looked at Polar after it, my heart rate was in the high zone for 90 minutes of it. So, you know, it depends on the game. You know, WSL, you know, it's getting bigger and bigger. Better quality players, better quality movement, attack, all those things. They complain about basically the same thing. You know, if it's a penalty area instant, you know, it's not like you go to the men and they say things and the women don't say things.
Yeah.
But I think further to that, because the women's game's getting bigger and bigger and there's more on it and more on them as well. Remember, these players are getting more scrutiny as well. It's not just me, they are. So points mean prizes, don't they? And caps and bonuses and money. So it's generally the same thing.
Yeah. And you were talking about the Euros then, you know, obviously the semi-final of Germany and France. We had a couple of questions coming in, and a lot of them were around, really. Obviously, you had an amazing Euros. It was weird in Wales because we tended to support you rather than the team. So the media was kind of following you rather than either of the teams.
It was quite cute, really. Yeah,
it was. Well, it was kind of like there was a lot of national pride about, you know, that you were doing such a great job out there. But on a refereeing sort of level, how do you deal with the pressure of being on the global stage? And it really was, you know, the global stage, because as you said, it was across all the TV channels. It was front page news on all the papers as well. How did you deal with that pressure? Did you take it in your stride, or did you have to sort of make a few changes to your general routine, pre-match routine?
There was definitely no change to my pre-match routine. You know, I warmed up the same. I set things out exactly the same. When I'm organised, I'm a better referee. I know that. In terms of pressure, I didn't feel it, if I'm honest. You know, we had a base down in Reading. All the referees were down there, all the observers. You know, you were, once the game started, obviously people would be moving around the country, you know, going up to Rotherham or Manchester, whatever. So you'd have a few changes, but I've got two very good people around me in refereeing. That's Rebecca Welsh, who's the English FIFA referee, and she's probably, you know, my rock in anything that happens, whether I'm had a good game, bad game, whatever. And also my mentor, my World Cup mentor, Jenny, and she's someone that was there as well. She was one of the observers at the time, and again, they were just so both very encouraging that I didn't actually feel that pressure. You're right, there was probably a little bit of, because I was Welsh and doing the Euros, and there wasn't a Welsh team to support, so a lot of people would be following and commenting on me. The only pressure I felt I had was trying to reply to everyone that was wishing me good luck or well done. You know, that was the sort of main pressure. But like I said, I think it goes back to personality, and you know, I just, you know, I was so happy to be there that actually I just tried to grab it with both hands. Every game that I did, I just tried to enjoy, because I'll be honest with you, one of my regrets is playing for Wales is not remembering games, not remembering moments. I've got a bad memory anyway, I don't know why, but I was trying to remember everything, which I will not now, you know, but I was just trying to live in the moment and enjoy every game, whether I was fourth official referee or even when I went to watch Rebecca referee her quarter-final game. I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant.
It was an amazing experience, I think, wasn't it? And hopefully the first of many. And hopefully the Welsh team will get to a couple as well and take the onus off your shoulders.
Yeah, I really do. I really hope that they get there.
Yeah, and now what you need to do is ask the FAW if you can have a PR person to answer all those emails. That's the next step. I'm not sure if you've got anyone from the refereeing team on tonight involved in that. And so what is your sort of 30 minutes, an hour up to kick off? Is there anything that you tend to do that kind of helps, you know, communicating with the teams or captains, or any rituals that you find calm you down a little bit and put you in the zone?
I'm trying to think if there's anything major. The thing that I've actually brought from playing is I will get dressed the same way. I know that sounds silly, but I will, for example, I will always put on my right sock, left sock, right boot, left boot. That's a sequence of things that I've carried on with as a player. In terms of preparation, I feel like my bag is the most important thing. And that's something, again, that I know Lee Evans has sort of brought into me, is being organised and knowing where everything is. It's not very, I'll be honest, one of the biggest things that I had a struggle with in the Euros is we were late. That really, at one point, I was fretting. So basically around Milton Keynes, there were loads of traffic issues. And we were meant to be there a certain time before, and we got there only an hour before it. By that point, I should have already done the goal line technology check, the comms check, the VAR stuff on everything. And I was sat in the car and I could feel myself fretting. And Rebecca came to watch the game. So she was in the car with me. And I just found myself actually just stripping away the emotion of, like it's the semi-final, just stripping it away. And I'm ready. Even if I'm there a minute before kickoff, I know I'm ready. I know that sounds really silly, but so I did a group text, because I set up a WhatsApp group for every game before, leading up to something. So the presentation was the same, the chat was the same, all those things. But I text the whole group saying, there's nothing we can do about this. As soon as we get there, let's all just relax and we'll just smash it.
Yeah.
So actually, even though I had a shorter amount of time to get ready for the biggest game of my career, nothing changed. I was still the same person, still warmed up the same. And that just kept me steady and stable.
I suppose it's when we talk to elite sort of referees, they talk about controlling the controllables,
exactly.
in control of everything that you can control. And that's part of it, isn't it? It's like anything else. You go to a big meeting in work, whatever, you need to know exactly, you need to make sure you're there in plenty of time. And I suppose you're ready to deal with any issues as they arise. And as long as you're doing that, you're feeling fairly confident then, aren't you? Because you know you're good enough and you've got the knowledge and all the rest. Yeah,
I think because obviously the team was near enough the same that I'd had throughout the whole tournament, apart from, one change. And it was just that. I just felt like, I was ready for the game. So, I don't, even being late, obviously it did mess with me a little bit. But, once, like you say, control the controllables, when I'm there, then I just go back into my rhythm and go back into my routines. Yeah, that's interesting. So what was your highlight, do you think, of the Euros? There's one thing that you could pick out and say, okay, that was kind of the elite moment of everything that happened there. I'm not sure if this is going to sound really corny, actually, but before the tournament happened, we had a meeting, and it was just going through all the, I don't know, I can't even remember everything, but it was just basically just going through what's going to happen. And one of the main people went, so the little mini car with the ball in will come out in the opening game, the 2 semi-finals and the final. And I was like, oh, that's a shame. I'm not going to experience it, because I think by then we knew who was doing the opening game. So I was like, oh. Yeah. So actually, one of my best photos that I've seen is me smiling, picking the ball out of the mini car. And I'll tell you why. Basically, I don't know I think it was a year before it, maybe 18 months before it. I was sat in the staff room, and I've got a friend called Sarah Stockton who knows nothing about football. She loves me and loves, so proud of me, but knows nothing about football. But she'd seen the mini car coming on for something. And she was like, so one of the things she said before the Euros was, will you get the mini car? Will you get the thing that comes on? And I was like, no, that won't happen to me. And actually, when I took the ball out of the van, that's all I could think about was the staff room with all my colleagues thinking they are going to love this. They're going to absolutely love this. You've made it. You've got the mini car. I've made it. I've got the car. So it was, and that's actually when I went back to work. That's one of the first things that they all brought up, the fact that I got the car. So that's not an elite moment. And I apologise that it's such a away from personal moment. But it's probably something that makes me smile every single time. Yeah. But this is a girl that basically said, why don't they have different colour sprays? Like she wanted a blue spray and a red spray, that with the colour. I was like, yeah, okay. But the mini car was the one thing that she taught boundaries. Yeah, the mini car, didn't it? Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I wasn't expecting that as an answer, but that's very nice. It's funny how those sort of personal moments are the things that you remember the most, aren't they? It's the human response, because it made me smile the most. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I want to touch on something that is often in the news. It's VAR, good old VAR. Well, it's always in the news, let's be honest. Every weekend it's in the news. So you obviously had this in the Euros. You at the Champions League as well? Was it towards the end of the...
So I had a big decision to make in the Champions League quarter-final. It was for a red card dog, but I didn't have to do an on-field review because it was supported. So my first ever on-field review was France against Belgium.
Yeah.
For a handball.
Are you in the... How do you feel about VAR, first of all? I mean, there's the argument on both sides, isn't there? Obviously there's that case of saying it's more support for the referee to ensure that decisions are right, but also there's been a few instances where referees maybe felt undermined by the fact that there's, another level of decision making going on in the match. Where do you come from when it comes to VAR?
Having been through the system and through the process of it, I think I'll just take a step back for a second and put my player's hat on. One of the things that drove me insane was referees not getting to the right decision. What would be clear and obvious for me, unfortunately, the referee couldn't see it, say, for example. And I think then putting the referee's hat, VAR for me is basically an opportunity to get the right decision. Clear and obvious that a referee is clearly missed. And therefore, the benefit of that is the right result will happen. So say it's a penalty. Well, the team will get a penalty. So for example, in my situation, France got a penalty from the handball that I missed. Granted, she missed the penalty. That's nothing to do with me, but the right decision was made to hopefully have the right outcome for a game. I've lost games as a player in the past because I didn't get something here, but they got something there. And then you lose one, and I just think for me, it's a case of trying to get, it's about VAR is about consistency. I think the Euros did that very well, if I'm honest with you. We worked extremely hard. We had many training camps in Turkey before the event, and we were working with the VARs that were going to be in the tournament, all those things. And, having experienced it as a referee, being in that situation, I was very much like, well, the right decision, I've come to the right decision. It's a penalty. I understand why people think that referees feel undermined. They don't. For me, I speak to many elite referees, and we don't feel undermined by it. We're being told we've missed something, and therefore, on that note, I think I'm a supporter of it.
Yeah, I suppose it's comforting in a way to have a safety net because everyone misses things.
Genuinely, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
All you're doing when you're refereeing is you're telling them what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So you're trying to explain everything that you're seeing or why you've given that yellow. And all they're doing is they're just checking it for you. And if they think based on the level of what UEFA or whoever said what they're saying is, right, okay, I think you need to look at this again.
Yeah. Well, managers always make me laugh because, however many seasons, I can't even, pre-COVID, wasn't it, when VAR came in? Was it? I can't remember. But they were saying in that season beforehand, we need VAR, we need to make sure we get the right decision. And afterwards, they said, we need to get rid of VAR because we need to go back to the way it was. And that's because through eyes, it's subjective to them that any decision has gone against their team, isn't it? Whether it's right or wrong.
That's why you love football. That's why I love football. It's because football's so subjective. So we could sit in a room together and see a tackle and you go red card all day. And I'll go, oh, I think it's a yellow. And that's not because of our level of understanding of I'm a referee, whatever. It's actually just a subjective view on it. And in a way, when we talked about personalities of referee before, actually, that's in it as well, because what you think is a red or a yellow, or I know there's laws, of course there's laws, and we try and stick to those laws as much as we can to do like a tick box. So distance from goal, direction of the ball, defender, is there one there? Of course there's tick boxes that you go through mentally to try and get to that right decision. So a referee then gives that decision. All that VAR is doing is checking it, having an angel on the back of your shoulder. That's how I see it. But of course I can see that some people have got things wrong. Yeah. People have missed things, and that's frustrating. But 3 years ago, like you say, pre-VAR, they were going mad about that as well. So what would you
Yeah.
rather?
There was
Because I think there's a higher rate. I believe there's a higher rate of right decisions, therefore right outcomes of games, because VAR's been involved.
Yeah, I think the Kipre handball in the Cardiff Swansea game on Sunday might have been picked up by VAR as he punched it by accident. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that would have been picked up, and that would have been a fairly simple process to say, okay, that is a penalty. But yeah, it's an interesting one as it spreads out, and there was actually what I wanted to touch on as well, and it does touch on a couple of the questions that have come in. Is it true that there were 50% less cameras at the women's Euros for VAR? Because that was something that came out, and it was highlighted as, maybe again, it's kind of those in power not taking the women's game as seriously as they do the men's game because there were less cameras involved. I'm not sure 100% whether that was ever found to be true, but it was something that came out. One of the Swedish players, I think, said that post the Euros.
We saw that, and UEFA were quick to say that's not true. So
yeah,
I don't know numbers. I don't know what she was claiming, what UEFA, what we had in Euros, but
it was enough anyway.
It was very much ignored. It wasn't ignored, sorry, but it was very much that she's got it wrong.
Yeah, good to know. So we've got a couple of questions here as well coming in. We've got about 10 or so minutes until you can be released to go and watch the Champions League and see how many Haaland scores. We've got one here that says, "Hi Cheryl, this is from David. How much of your time does refereeing take up?" And I suppose as a part of that, training-wise, especially, I mean, what sort of hours are you putting in doing that sort of training behind the scenes that people generally obviously would never see?
It takes up a lot of my life. I train, even on a rest day, I'm probably on an exercise bike, just doing something very light. In terms of training that I'm doing is basically for these major tournaments, we have a fitness coach that checks on what we're doing, and we have tick boxes basically. So they need to see a certain amount of high intensity sessions. They want to see so many strength sessions. So for all those sessions to happen, speed, whatever it is that it's got to fit in and around my day. Now my school day starts at 8:15. As a PE teacher, I can be on a fixture and not finish until 5:30, 6. So my training fits around that. So I'm either in the gym at 7 o'clock in the morning till 8. I'm working with some PTs in a local gym down the road. So I'm either in there 7 till 8, or it's not or I'm in there in the evening afterwards, or I've got a good relationship with Chester University and they allow me to go onto their 4G pitch and their track there. So I'm basically training all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I tell you, my wife's a teacher and she recently did the Ironman in Tenby. So she was that sort of similar level of 5 in the morning and then getting home at 7:30, 8 and going to training then as well. I saw it, but there were some negatives too. That's not a poor job. So there's another question here that says, what techniques do you use, or do you have any techniques that you use on the pitch to get over a mistake? So if you know you've made a mistake, how do you get yourself into the right mindset then to crack on afterwards?
I'd love to say that I've got fabulous techniques, but because as a referee, we are literally making decisions all the time. Then therefore it sort of just goes. I don't know if it sounds a bit silly, but it's about just trying to say the next one. I go in time in games. I work every 10 minutes. I try and make, every time it's a watch check of just 10 more minutes. So I use that quite a lot. I think in the Euros it was handy because you had angels talking to you. Comms kits help, assistants help, fourth officials help. Having that team and that team ethos around you to get you through moments. I had a big moment in the quarterfinal when I gave that red card. Even though VAR had checked it, I got the communication through. Cheryl, check complete, good to go. I got it right. I dwelled on it. Thought, God, oh my God, have I got it right? Even though I've had that process. So I'm not perfect at this. All I'd say is I work in blocks of 10 minutes. And also in in my pre-match, I always say that if you hear me go quiet, just get me back in, just get me back on into communicating, because if I'm quiet, I'm probably dwelling on something.
Yeah.
So I'm quite open and honest with my team. I say, you know, I'll be dwelling on something, and it's just about making sure that I go again and try and make fewer mistakes.
Yeah. And
You know,
who's harder to deal with, an angry teenager in school or an elite footballer on the pitch?
very difficult to answer.
Both.
Very difficult to answer. They're both difficult, yeah.
Yeah, so because it probably helps a little bit that in your day-to-day you are kind of negotiating continuously. As a teacher, you are negotiating and you're communicating all the time. And I guess it's transferable skills that you can then take
exactly
up
the
to the
same.
pitch.
Exactly the same. Just 22 naughty boys that I deal with.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not all bad, by the way. They're not all bad. That's just a joke.
there was a question that came in that we were wanted a quick look at, and it's just about any barriers that you felt you faced as a female referee coming through the game, and how you kind of overcame that, and I suppose off the back of that come advice to any other young females who maybe have just started their journey in refereeing.
It's hard to say about barriers. You know, I'll be really blunt, and I'll still touch words, as I've been very lucky in terms of not having too many barriers in terms of stopping me or making it difficult for me. You know, the second glance looks were never nice at the start. You know, like, who's the referee? Oh, it's Cheryl. Oh, it's then double take. But that doesn't really tend to happen anymore, obviously, you know, with the change of and the progress that I've made.
You just wear your medal. The medal you've got there, you can show everyone your medal. You can just wear that, can't you? When you referee the game,
yeah.
just
might be
point to it.
Might be bouncing.
Heavy.
I think the barrier sometimes is me. Sometimes I'm the biggest critic. The barrier at the minute I've got is age. I just recently turned 42. Getting up in the morning or going to do fitness tests and things like that has become more of a struggle. So I'd actually say in the last 2 years it's become more of a struggle. That's my barrier, is me wanting to be the best I can be and the fittest I can be. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into that, and probably that's my biggest frustration, that is when these players or managers or whoever is having a go at a referee, or including myself, is there's a lot of hard work to have even, you know, get on that pitch. And we do the best we can. We really do. You know, when you do hear comments, that's the barrier of frustration, is we work as hard as we can to get in the right position to make the right decision. And I think that, you know, when you make a good decision, or if you give a good advantage, it's overlooked. And I think that should be celebrated more. You know, when you see a referee stick their arm out because you could have given something there, but it's ended up in a goal, more credit should be given. You know, I think that, yeah, I wouldn't say that I've not struggled personally with anything major, but there's just been a few things now and again that obviously I've had to work hard at.
It's the old adage, I guess, of if you don't talk about the referee, they've had a great game in a way, isn't it? And so it is that idea of, you know, you just don't speak about it. The best referees
don't talk about them, and I get that as well. But, you know, sometimes it's put credit where credit's due, that if someone's had a good game, then say it, you know.
And would you have, sorry, Cheryl.
I was just about to say that I was a fourth official recently, and it was lovely to hear both managers, both teams saying how well the referee had done. Yeah,
it's always there. I mean, it's nice to be told you're doing a good job, whatever field you're in, isn't it? Definitely. I've got a quick question from Ross here, and he says, when are we going to get a main sort of official in the Premier League, female official in the Premier League? Yeah. When do we think that's going to happen? It can't be too far away, you'd imagine.
There's so much to it, though. It's about, you know, you could talk and say Rebecca's the next one to be anywhere near it because of the level she's at the moment. But you're talking, it's not just about gender. It's about, you know, hundreds of other good referees around at the same time, and it's luck, and it's getting good marks, and it's fitness. You know, we're also, remember, as females, we have to do the men's fitness test.
Yeah.
And that's a struggle. You know, we have to work really, really hard to pass men's fitness tests. So, you know, I'd love it to be Rebecca. Of course I would. She might say something a bit different. I don't know. But could it happen? Yes. I don't know when, because you've got to support these girls in what would be a major jump. I know that obviously they've got 2 assistants now, and Sean and Natalie, and that's that's brilliant. Hopefully we'll see a referee in the Premier League, and it'll be supported and celebrated, not with the scrutiny that you probably or could happen.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, one of the reasons I suppose it is a smaller pool to choose from, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Is what you said. Yeah.
The women's football, women's refereeing, sorry, is massive. I went to an event a couple of years ago, and I was like, "What flipping heck? There's so many girls here refereeing. How good is that?" But then, we're talking before about the scrutiny and the pressure and whatever. Some of those numbers will drop off, and then some more will come in. You don't ever have this massive pool of female referees, and then you've got to get 1 or 2 gems that are fit, healthy, work-life balance, doesn't want to, maybe some of them want to be mothers, for example, and that's 18 months around, all those things. So there's a lot to it, but I would love it to happen one day, and I think it will. It's just who. Just
when and who, yeah, exactly. Last question now, before we release everyone for the Champions League, is from Gail, who says, do you have any specific mental preparations before a game?
Say that again, sorry.
Sorry, do you have any specific mental preparations you do before a game?
No, the mental preparation is the bag. I know that sounds ridiculous, but if I've got everything in order and everything's there, and, at the minute I'm going through, I've got 4 drawers with 4 different kits at the minute. So I've got WSL, Cymru Prem, UEFA and FIFA. And in my head, once I been 2 months away, actually, when I came back, I was just like, oh my God, I can't cope, because everything's everywhere in boxes and bags and things like that. But my mental preparation is the bag. And once I've got the bag, and I know then the team, the WhatsApp group, time of arrival, things like that. And then I know my routine once I'm there. The warm-ups the same, nothing changes. So
preparation, I'm feeling confident about
preparation and organisation, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So, well, Cheryl, I got a message here from Werner who says, thanks very much. A great initiative. And I believe that, he needs to go now, as he needs to observe a Champions League, and we're probably all in the same boat. But I think that's been a fantastic chat with you, Cheryl. And as I say, you're an inspiration to a lot of referees out there, both in Wales and further afield as well. And we look forward to maybe having another chat in a year, and you can tell us all about what you've been up to in the next 12 months as well.
We'll see.
More stories. But and thanks for everyone for coming along and interacting with the session. But again, thank you, Cheryl, for your time, and all the best in the future.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.